In the months leading up to that day where I finally got that positive pregnancy test, the one that stayed, there were so many things that I had done differently. And after years of adding more and more things into my life in the hopes of improving my fertility, I finally got to the stage where it just felt so hugely overwhelming. And I knew there were a lot of things that just had to go. But why did this make a difference? And how did it contribute to finally getting pregnant? Today, I share the 5 things that I stopped doing on my fertility journey and why I found this so helpful. Welcome to your journey to fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I have a solo episode coming up for you today, and this is one that I was reflecting on recently. I had a conversation with a student who was in the midst of her IVF journey, and she was one of those people who was just doing all of the things. Going to 1,000 appointments, finding what else she could add to her plate, what more could she be doing in order to help her fertility. And I relate to this so much, and it just puts me back in those moments of overwhelm and just knowing, researching what else could I be doing? What more can I be adding to my plate in order to help my fertility journey? And we hear about these things all the time. We'll hear about this amazing supplement that someone took, or we'll see an ad for some kind of fertility tea on social media and we'll think, I have to add this, I have to do this as well. But so often we hear about what people are adding to their journeys and not what they're taking away from them. And I think that that is an important thing to address, because more doesn't always equal more when you're trying to conceive. In fact, and this was the case for me, it just adds to this ever-growing pile of things that you should be doing, that you should be doing better, that you shouldn't be forgetting about, and just stressing and adding into your plate. So today I wanted to go through a few things that I stopped doing when I was trying to conceive. And I think that not doing these things made an enormous difference. It is this feeling of overwhelm and having a constant stressor in your life and then adding more stress on top of this that is hugely dysregulating for your nervous system. So I like this idea of taking things away from this overflowing bucket of stuff that you think that you have to do. And this is going to be different for everyone. Not everybody is going to exactly take away the same things that I did, but I wanted to go through a few things that I found personally incredibly helpful. And these are some things that I try to go through with my students in different ways as well. And I think that you'll find that some of these you'll relate to, and that perhaps you can start doing a little bit differently on your journey too. So let's get started with them. The number one thing, I talk about this a lot, that I stopped doing was I took a look at the 19 different supplements that I was taking every day. And yes, there were actually 19 at one point. And everything that went with that, the stress if I missed them. And, I woke up at 2 a.m. so many times stressing that I had forgotten to take all my supplements before bed, and that was going to be the end of my fertility, that cycle. Like, this is ridiculous. I had read all the books and I basically took every supplement that related to either egg quality or supporting my hormones or my nervous system. And I'm sure that all of these supplements were helpful in their own way, but the way I went about it was incredibly overwhelming. It was very all or nothing. And I don't believe that the combination of everything that I took was doing me any favors. So I worked with an amazing functional nutritionist and I just got back to basics. I did a little bit of testing to see within my body what my levels were actually like with certain things, what were my iron levels like, my vitamin D, my B12, all of those sorts of things. And did I need to supplement in the way that I was, or was there an easier way to go about this? And I think in the end, I ended up with a combination of about 5 or 6 different supplements to just really support my own personal health journey. And this felt so much more manageable. And most of the supplements that I took then, I still take today because they're just generally good for my overall health. And there's a few things that I've always been deficient in, like iron levels. So take stock of all of the things that you're taking. Is there a better way to go about this? And if you're not sure, invest in a professional to give you some advice. Yes, it costs a little bit of money to go and see a professional, but it is a lot cheaper than continuing to spend hundreds of dollars every month on a whole bunch of supplements that you don't necessarily need. So that is my number one, and something that really just gave me this beautiful feeling of relief. Number 2, and I want to talk a little bit about exercise. And I see this a lot with so many people that work with me. I stopped using exercise as a way to release stress. Don't get me wrong. Exercise is an excellent way to release stress, but the way that I went about it, and I see so many people going about it, isn't necessarily helpful. I think that everyone has a different relationship with exercise. It was something that I always enjoyed. And obviously, something that I teach. So thankfully, it was something that I did enjoy doing. But I used it as a way to really clear my head and push my body to kind of forget about my fertility journey, very typical type A approach to exercise. I loved high intensity exercise, sweating, getting my heart rate up. I love lifting heavy and combining all of those things. We know the benefits of exercise. We don't need to go over that. It's widely researched and proven. But we need to use exercise in a way that supports our fertility, our hormones, and our nervous system when we're trying to conceive. I remember I would be dragging myself to spin classes when I had my period and just thinking, I just don't have the energy. But, I feel great afterwards, and it's such a good way to clear my head, and I want to go and lift really heavy at the gym this week. And, it was no wonder I ended up with thyroid issues and insomnia and so many other things where my body was screaming at me to slow down, but I was just ignoring it and thinking, this is what I've always done. It's what I've always enjoyed. It's helpful because it's exercise, right? But no, it's not the way it works when we're trying to conceive. And it's not the way it works as women on a very basic level. This idea of allowing some space for rest was incredibly foreign to me. And I felt guilty for taking rest days. I'm not sure if you relate to that as well, but you plan to go to the gym 3 days a week, but then you get your period and you don't want to go and you think, now I'm going to eat badly for the rest of the week. It's not going to matter if I don't exercise. There is a time and a place for all exercise within your cycle, but it's knowing when to fit each kind or each type of exercise that's key. I have spoken about this quite a lot in other episodes, but I'll go through just quickly in case this is a new concept for you. You have 4 distinct phases within your menstrual cycle. Starting with menstruation, we know that this is a time where physiologically your body is at its lowest energy levels. Your hormone levels are at their lowest. And your uterus, which is actually a muscle, is working overtime. It's working so hard just to release the previous month's buildup. Takes a lot of effort for your body to do that. So those days where you are dragging yourself out of bed, you just got that feeling of heaviness around your pelvis, your energy levels are low, that's okay. Lean into all of that. Sleep in, skip the gym. Don't lie around all day and do nothing, by no means, but what can you do to keep your body moving gently without overly exerting yourself? Go for a walk, get outside, do some beautifully gentle restorative yoga practices for the menstrual cycle. Anything where you're nourishing your body, creating movement in a gentle way, but not overly exerting yourself. As you come out of your period and you start to work into that follicular phase where your hormone levels are building, that's where we start to kind of wake up that hormonal system again. This is where we want to start getting back. If you like those more intense forms of exercise, this is where we want to start including them. And as you get to ovulation, which is like the peak of your cycle, ideally here your energy levels are at their highest. And that's where you want to go for those HIIT workouts, go to the gym, push yourself, sweat, feel exhausted, because your body is supporting all of those sorts of movements and exercises. After ovulation, and we're moving into the 2-week wait. And of course, if you're trying to conceive, this is the stage where we're either pregnant. So in that case, you want to be supporting that beautiful growing embryo. Or if you're not pregnant, your hormone levels are going to start to drop again and we get ready for our period once more. In either situation here, it isn't a time to push yourself. The luteal phase hates stress. We're not at the point like menstruation where the hormone levels are bottomed out. Hopefully progesterone levels are increasing, especially if you're pregnant. But again, this is a time where we want to lean into those more gentle forms of exercise. So yes, keep moving, keep going to the gym, but scale back the intensity. Maybe you're not going for your personal best in terms of the amount of weight that you can lift. In the luteal phase, I like to go for weightlifting, but lighter options, fewer reps, like not feeling completely exhausted when you leave the gym. And aerobic exercise is wonderful, but again, we're not pushing ourselves for these high intense moments where our heart rate is maxed out. And again, we're feeling exhausted afterwards. And I find that if you are living in sync with your cycle and allowing exercise to work around this, it sets you up for a far better month ahead. When I learned about all of these things and I started leaning into them, I noticed that I would ovulate more consistently, more around the middle of my cycle. I would have far less PMS. Life just felt a bit easier. I had more energy at every phase of the cycle. So I know how wonderful exercise can be for releasing stress, but start to approach it just a little bit differently. So number 3, this is a bit of a controversial one. People always have something to say about this when I mention it. I stopped watching the news. I think this is especially important at the moment. This week, we've just seen the results of the US election, and the news is intense, to say the least, even from all the way in Australia. Now, I'm not saying don't stay informed. We come from a very privileged place to be able to watch so much of the news from a distance and see what's happening in parts of the world. And honestly, things we couldn't even imagine happening on our front doorsteps. But we should all be aware of what's happening in our world. But news these days is no longer about staying informed. It's about advertising dollars, click-through rates for advertisers, and the way media hooks you in is through fear. So why is this a problem for fertility? It is hugely dysregulating for your nervous system, and it leads to more cortisol production. It's basically adding stress to an already very stressful time in your life. And your nervous system was not designed to deal with the problems of every country, every issue the world over. We evolved to cope with our own tribe. Our ancestors were only really dealing with the problems of our own little community and perhaps a few of the villages nearby. We are not equipped to deal with the atrocities that affect millions, billions of people around the world. I read somewhere recently that these days we're exposed to more news about other people within a week than our ancestors would have been exposed to in their lifetime. So how do we get around this? Turn off the TV and avoid watching videos on media sites. Images and commentary can be incredibly activating and stimulating for your brain. Instead, what I find is a lot more helpful is read articles on news sites that you trust rather than, just clicking on these random links that you see on social media that are full of horrible images and, have these really scary headlines, again, all based around fear. So stay informed, but pick where you get your news from and turn off the evening news from the television. That does not do anyone any favors. If you need a break altogether, and this is exactly what I did at times when I was struggling with my fertility, just switch off completely and get someone to update you on the important things that are happening around the world, if you feel comfortable with this. My husband is a bit of a news junkie, and I would get him to give me a rundown at the end of each day. Okay, what have I missed? What's happened? What do I really need to know? And he can kind of filter out, or your person that you trust can filter out the really awful details and give you the bigger picture. So you are staying informed. It's not just sticking your head in the sand, but you're not overwhelming yourself with so much of what we see. Okay, number 4, and this is kind of related to the first item I spoke about with the supplements, but it goes a little bit deeper. I stopped doing all the things. I am sure that you can relate to some of this. At one point I was on top of my 19 different supplements. I was going to acupuncture 3 times a week, fertility massage weekly. I was going to specialist fertility hypnosis sessions. I was seeing a counselor at one point as well. I would do my meditations 3 times per day. I had to do my fertility yoga practice at least once per day. My diet had to be perfect. I couldn't eat out unless, I'd already scanned the menu and approved it prior. It's so exhausting and it's endless and you can't do everything perfectly. And I know what it's like when you discover some of these things. It feels empowering. When I found out about the benefits of acupuncture for fertility, it felt wonderful. I felt like I had this sense of control back over my journey. And I don't know where it flipped exactly, but I got to the point where all of these things had control over me. And maybe it's my personality, and I know a lot of people can relate to this very type A driven, if I do everything perfectly, it has to work. Because how can it not work? Because our whole lives we're taught, especially as women, effort equals rewards. But that isn't how fertility works. And perfection is really stressful. And it completely tips the scales the other way. Like I said, waking up at 2 a.m. because I forgot to take my supplements and then disrupting my sleep and going and rushing down to the kitchen to take them in the middle of the night. This doesn't help anything. So what I did instead was picked the things that I loved, the things that I looked forward to. And for me, this was getting outside each day, going for a walk, coming to my yoga practice, some meditation before bed. But these are things that I still love doing today. They're things that I love having in my life because they make me feel good. And if I don't feel like my yoga practice or doing some meditation before bed, I don't do it. And it doesn't matter. And I don't beat myself up about it. I don't give it a second thought. But other things like the fertility massage and acupuncture so often, and the hypnosis and all these things, they're all fine, but I hated going so often. I hated feeling like they were an obligation. So I cut them out completely and just went back to them when I felt like it. For example, I loved going to acupuncture around ovulation as I found it really calmed my nerves, but I didn't need to go 3 times a week. It was just such a big chunk out of my day where I already had so many other things on and, you're navigating work and relationships and so many other things into your life. So choose the things that you genuinely enjoy, that make you feel good, and go to them when you want to. And do not feel guilty about cutting them out when you need. Now, the last thing is maybe the most important. And number 5 is I stopped putting my life on hold. This is something I hear a lot. And I think that if you take one thing from this episode today, then let it be this. This is the key to getting what you want, to manifesting the life that you want. Start enjoying your life today. We avoid planning for the future when we're struggling with fertility. We don't book trips away. We don't plan future getaways with friends. We avoid going for promotions at work because we don't know if we're going to have to be on maternity leave in a few months' time. We change these plans of where we're going to live and how we'll decorate the house and what we'll spend money on. But the best way I like to explain this to my students is, imagine if I told you that you would be pregnant 6 months from now. I could absolutely guarantee this for you. Without a doubt, that would happen 6 months from today. If that's what you knew was going to happen, how would you change your life? How would it be different? What would you do differently, and how would you start planning your future? Plan to go on that holiday that you've been dreaming about. And perhaps if you're worried about money, or you're worried about where you're going to be at your stage of treatment, book something that's refundable. So, you can cancel for free if you need to, and know that you've got that peace of mind. If you have to stop doing something that you love to support your trying to conceive journey. So for example, if you are going through IVF and your doctor has told you to slow down with your exercise and, perhaps avoid going to the gym so much, don't just completely cut it out of your life. Find ways to replace things that you love that perhaps you've had to scale back when you've been trying to conceive. So if it is exercise in terms of high intensity work and, it is supporting your IVF journey, instead of avoiding exercise altogether, what can you replace it with? Can you start a fertility yoga practice, or find some beautiful areas to go for walks in your area and look at it as a way to nourish your body instead of restricting it? Try not to be so rigid in your life that you forget to have fun. Book things that you look forward to, and that might be concerts or plays or nights out with friends where you, heaven forbid, allow yourself to have a glass of wine. Just something that you have in your calendar that you look forward to. I know friendships are important, and this is something I spoke about on an episode a couple of weeks ago about how you navigate friendships when you're trying to conceive. But we need people in our lives because these friendships and these relationships that we've built, they fill up our cup. It's important to be choosy who you spend your time with, but don't forget about this idea of co-regulation, this ability of your nervous system to come into a place of regulation and to fill up your energy cup by spending time with people that support and understand you. And this is one of the best ways for you to feel balanced and in control, is by spending time with people who get you. Make time for your relationship. Think about if you knew that you were going to conceive, no questions, in 6 months' time, how would you approach your relationship a little bit differently? Could you plan more time to enjoy things together as opposed to just looking at a calendar and working in these endless 2-week intervals in your life? Can you plan time together that doesn't just involve trying to conceive, appointments that you've got to go to, when you're planning intercourse, nagging each other about, everything that you think that the other person should be doing, taking their supplements, drinking enough water. How can you come back to just the two of you, the reason that you got together in the first place? How can you treat yourself? You deserve to be looked after as well. What are the things that you love doing? Make time to go for a massage. Spend a day where you go out for lunch to your favorite restaurant and you just order whatever you want on the menu and you just completely enjoy every bite. Is there things that you've stopped doing because you feel guilty that they're not contributing to your journey of trying to conceive? Maybe you just spend an afternoon laying on the couch reading or watching Netflix. Be lazy. Enjoy doing nothing. All of these things that just contribute to time with yourself. And this is the last thing I just want to mention on this, was something I found really, really helpful and opened my eyes, was have something else in your life that you're striving for. So not just something to look forward to, but other goals or other things that you want to learn or improve upon or include within your life. Have this sense of excitement or anticipation, like you're achieving something that does not relate to fertility. So I am one of these people that is forever signing up to online courses. And, these days I sign up to all these neuroscience courses where I learn about nervous system regulation and, patterns of dysregulation and stress. And I find these fascinating. And yes, it does contribute to the work that I do. And it sounds very boring and very nerdy to a lot of people, but I love it. And, I get excited to learn more. And these courses that you can go through, like there's such a sense of achievement once you get through them, and you're able to then employ the principles that you've learned into your own life and to see the changes that come about from that. So I think finding things that you look forward to doing and that give you a sense of, look what I've done, look what I've been able to achieve, that have no bearing on your fertility, because without you realizing it, it does have a huge bearing on your fertility. It shows you that you're capable. It shows you what your mind and your body are able to do. And when you can find as many things in your life that aren't just about trying to conceive, it opens the world up again. So I would love to know your experiences with this. What do you relate to from this episode? And what else have you stopped doing on your own journey that you've found that you just no longer need? And once you were able to let go of them, you just had this beautiful weight lifted off your shoulders. So I'd love to hear from you. If you have any comments or just want to share anything, please leave me a message on Instagram, send me an email. I always love hearing your feedback about the episodes. And if you have 30 seconds, one of the most helpful things that you can do for the podcast is leave a quick review. So if you scroll down to the bottom and just click on a star rating and leave a quick written review, that would be so amazing. So on the next episode of the podcast, we are chatting with Lindsay Goodwin, who is a spiritual fertility expert. This is such a fun episode, and we're talking very woo, all the things spirit babies, intuition, spiritual practices to help you on your fertility journey. It's an episode you won't want to miss, and I look forward to having you back next week for that. So until then, I am sending you all of my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility. The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace, to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.